At the start of the Beatles' career in 1962, Brian Epstein and George Martin had devised a plan between them of releasing 4 singles and 2 albums each year to sustain interest in the band and satisfy demand. They also followed the strict rules of singles not appearing on albums, as this was considered better value for money for consumers. However, by 1966, the Beatles had had enough of this release plan. They were no longer interested in commercial demands and were now more focused on their own musical development. Welcome back to Revolver In-Depth, and this is episode 15, Paperback Writer. So we've now covered all 14 tracks that appeared on Revolver, but there's 2 more songs that were recorded during the Revolver sessions that would be released prior to Revolver itself as a non-album single. Now this non-album single would actually be the Beatles' only non-album single that they released in 1966. Bear in mind, up until this point, they'd normally done probably about, was it 4 non-album singles a year, or maybe it was 3 non-album, and then if they put out a single off an album, it would have to be released the same day as the album. That's the only way they would get around that. So yeah, this was the only single, the non-album single that they put out this year. The other single was Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby, a double A side, the day that the album came out. But not really a proper single. This one, I would say, is much more of a proper single. So today in this video, we're going to be talking about the A side of that single. So as I mentioned in the previous episodes in this series about Tomorrow Never Knows, during this period, the Beatles were very fascinated with the idea of writing songs with just one chord. This was very much the style of what Indian music did. Most Indian songs are just based around one chord. And Tomorrow Never Knows is based around one chord. I believe The Word off Rubber Soul, and I think If I Needed Someone as well, is also supposed to be based off just one chord. So this song here, Paperback Writer, this is Paul attempting to do his own song based off one chord. Little Richard also tried this with Long Tall Sally, which Lennon and McCartney obviously both grew up absolutely loving. So they wanted to try and keep up this thing of doing just one note on a rock and roll song. So one day McCartney decided that he wanted to be an idiot and read the Daily Mail. Now, as a side note, the Daily Mail, these days, I think in the 60s, to be fair, it was a different paper to what it is now. But these days, to give you an idea of the sort of paper it is, if you write a Wikipedia article, most Wikipedia articles have to be backed up with sources. Wikipedia itself will not allow the Daily Mail to be used as a source because it is considered fake news, in the words of the President of the United States. Yes, and the thing is, if he was over here, he would like the Daily Mail because it peddles fake news. Yeah, just like Fox News does in the States, or GBB's over here on the TV, so yeah. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Anyway, in this paper at the time, in the Daily Mail, there was a story that caught Paul's attention about an aspiring author. He wanted to be a paperback writer. So feeling inspired by this story, whilst driving over to Lennon's house in Weybridge for a writing session, McCartney would actually begin to compose Paperback Writer, and by the time he got to Lennon's house, it was pretty much finished, and he'd written it in the style of a letter. Now, these lyrics also reflect the can-do attitude of the 1960s in Britain. Wouldn't it be nice if people had a can-do attitude these days? Everyone now is all very down on everything, but back then it was all can-do. Well, hey guys, let's do it, man. Yeah. Less division, I suppose, but you know. The Beatles began work on Paperback Writer at Abbey Road Studios, or EMI Studios as it was known then, on April 13th of 1966. Now to begin with, they worked on getting the basic track nailed down. For the basic track, McCartney played lead guitar on his Epiphone Casino, Harrison played rhythm guitar on his Gibson SG, Lennon played tambourine, and Starr played drums. Now the band would actually manage to nail the basic track in just 2 takes, and both these takes have been released. If you listen to the 2022 Super Deluxe edition of Revolver, you will find on there Paperback Writer takes 1 and 2, it's all on as the same song. Because basically what happened, they did take 1, it broke down halfway through, then pretty much straight after that they went back into take 2 and they completed take 2, and yeah, that was it, the song was complete. They decided take 2 was the one to use. So the backing track for this song was recorded in however long that outtake is. It's only about, well, how long's Paperback Writer? 2.5 minutes plus the breakdown, so 4 or 5 minutes they recorded this basic track in, and you can hear the whole thing on the Revolver box set. So I think this is possibly the only Beatles song that's ever been put out, so in terms of outtakes, where everything outtake related to the song has actually been put out in the public domain. There's nothing left in the vaults now that's Paperback Writer related. Now, despite nailing the basic track here, the band wouldn't actually do any overdubs this day, so once it was nailed, they went home. You may be thinking they were being a bit lazy, but they weren't. They'd already worked on another song earlier in the session. Love You Too, I think was what they'd worked on earlier in the session. Go and watch my video on Love You Too if you want to hear all about that. And you'll also hear in that video if it was that song they worked on this day. I'm a professional, I really should have checked that in advance. Yeah. So the second and final session for the song took place the following day on April 14th of 1966. So throughout this session the band worked on applying overdubs to Paperback Writer. So firstly, McCartney would overdub his lead vocals onto one track, and onto another track he recorded his Rickenbacker bass part. Lennon and Harrison also overdubbed some falsetto backing vocals onto the same track as the bass. Now the recording of the bass actually caused a lot of headache for EMI engineers, as McCartney wanted it to sound heavier and louder than it normally would. So the bass for this song was mastered using a new Abbey Road invention, the automated transistor overload control, which allowed them to apply extra bass without risking the needle jumping on playback for consumers. So I don't quite understand how this invention worked and made the bass work okay, but I will explain why bass was a problem on records in the 60s. So a lot of 60s records, original 60s versions, 60s mixes have bass very low down, because if you turn the bass too high, well obviously it will then make your speaker vibrate, your record player vibrate, and then the needle will start jumping. So that's why on a lot of 60s records the bass is turned quite low down. Now with a lot of these Beatles remixes that we've been getting, the bass has finally been getting turned up because it's not as big a problem now. Plus modern vinyl records are 180 grams, which means they're deeper grooves, which means the needle isn't going to start jumping about. But because back then vinyl was made on more of a mass, everybody had to use it. It wasn't 180 grams, so it didn't have as deep grooves as it does these days. So there you go, there's some nerdy news about basses. News, not news, you know what I mean. Nerdiness about basses. Anyway, after these were overdubbed onto the track, George Martin would overdub a piano part played through a Leslie speaker onto the track, and then McCartney would apply some extra lead guitar fills onto it. So even though this song isn't destined to go on Revolver, it's still kept up a tradition that most other tracks on Revolver has done. They've filled up all 4 tracks on the 4-track tape. So it's that time, folks, it's reduction mix time. So a reduction mix would now be created to free up an extra track so that more overdubs could be applied. So once the track was freed up, Lennon and Harrison would record more backing vocals, including the famous chorus and the Frère Jacques counter melody. The song was then complete at this point, so all that was left to do was mix it. Now whilst mixing it, a heavy tape echo was applied to the vocals in the chorus refrain. Anyway, with the mixing done, that was Paperback Writer complete. So in the time between completing the song and it coming out, the Beatles needed to think of a way to promote this song. Now up until this point, with most of their singles, what they'd done is it would go out, and then when they would go to TV shows all around the world, they would appear on them TV shows, either playing the song live or miming it on those TV shows. But they couldn't be arsed with that anymore. They just wanted to be in the studio. They didn't even want to be on tour. So they had to think of a way of how we can promote this without actually having to do very much. So they would do something called a promotional video. They kind of done this with a couple of the previous singles, Help, I Feel Fine, We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper and Ticket to Ride. But really this was the first time where they consciously decided to do it. The other ones were much more of an afterthought, whereas this time it was all done prior to the single coming out, and they really were committed to getting these done because they didn't want to go out and promote it. So the idea was the Beatles would record themselves miming their new single, and then they would just send this video to TV shows around the world. So they all had a performance to show, and bear in mind there was no social media back then, the world wasn't all connected. So they could send the video to America, it could be shown in America, and the same thing could be shown in France. And the French aren't going to know the difference. Same here, they could do a video in Britain and then send that same video to Italy or something, and they're not going to know because unless you know someone Italian and you phone them up and say, hey, have you seen that Beatles video? Oh yeah, the one where they're doing this. So yeah, it would be a lot harder to do now. They'd have to do quite a lot of different videos, but back then, yeah, they could get away with it a lot easier. So the band recruited Michael Lindsay Hogg to direct these videos. Now this was the first time, I'm pretty sure, where Michael worked with the Beatles. He would work with them quite a few times after this. I know he worked on the Hey Jude and Revolution videos. I don't think he did Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, I might be wrong on that. He also was the director on the Let It Be film. You can see him in the Get Back documentary as well. That was his film. And then post-Beatles, he's worked with Paul quite a lot on Wings singles. I'm pretty sure he did the video for Mulligan Tyre, he did the video for all the videos for London Town actually. So yeah, I don't think he worked with any of the other ones post-Beatles. I don't think he worked with John, George or Ringo, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. He maybe did work with Ringo, but I'm doubting myself. But anyway, this was the first time he worked with them, and it was the beginning of quite a not lifelong, but quite a big association between Lindsay Hogg and the Beatles. So the first set of videos were recorded on May 19th of 1966 in Studio 1 of Abbey Road. 3 clips were made of the band performing Paperback Writer. So firstly, they recorded themselves in colour performing the song. This video was intended for the Ed Sullivan Show in the US. After that, they recorded 2 further videos of them performing the song, but this time they were filmed in black and white. The first of these two black and white videos was intended to be shown on Goodbye Lucky Stars, and the second video was intended for Ready Steady Go. So that was 3 videos now in the bag for Paperback Writer, plus they'd also recorded some for Rain during this day's filming work, but they weren't done yet, they were going to film some more. So the following day, on May 20th, 1966, the band along with Michael Lindsay Hogg made their way to Chiswick House in London to record more videos. For the Paperback Writer video, the band were filmed in the conservatory, and they were also filmed miming the song in the Statue Garden. So in total, by the end of this, there was 4 videos that had been recorded for Paperback Writer, 2 in colour, 2 in black and white, 3 obviously at Abbey Road, 1 at Chiswick House. And the Chiswick House video these days is what is considered the official video, the proper music video for the song. Same with Rain. They also, I'll get onto the Rain one in the next video, but they did record a video for Rain, also at Chiswick House. But for some stupid reason on YouTube, they've uploaded one of the black and white Abbey Road videos, despite most fans seeing the official video for Rain also being the Chiswick House one, because it's like a proper music video, effectively. It's not them just miming the track, they're also kind of being a bit arty about it as well, if you will. Anyway, the Chiswick House video got its first airing on Top of the Pops on June 2nd, 1966, although despite it being shot in colour, it was broadcast in black and white. So yeah, if you want to see the Chiswick House colour video, well you can, it's on YouTube, just search Paperback Writer, it'll be the first thing that comes up. However, if you want to see the colour Abbey Road video and the 2 black and white videos, then you'll have to buy the 1+ video DVD collection that came out in 2015. All the Beatles music videos are on that, so it's worth having, because for some reason they won't put them all on the internet in this day and age, so you've got to still buy the DVD if you want them all. But it's still worth having, because for some, like I say, for some stupid reason, that's the only way you can see the Rain video remastered, the actual Rain video. Instead, they've put the alternative, what we'd call an alternative video these days, on the internet. I don't know either. Paperback Writer was released on June 10th of 1966 in Britain, and it was released slightly earlier in the States on May 30th of 1966. Now, by the time this had been released, it had been 27 weeks since the band's previous single had come out, which was the double A-side We Can Work It Out Day Tripper single. So this at the time was the longest gap between Beatles singles that they'd ever had. There would have eventually become much longer gaps than this, but at this point this was the longest. Now this single would actually be the first Beatles single since She Loves You in 1963, not to debut on top of the charts. It was also their lowest selling single since Love Me Do came out in 1962. However, don't worry folks, although it didn't debut at number 1, it did eventually reach number 1, so yes, we do have another number 1 Beatles single here. It would also manage to reach number 1 in America, West Germany, Australia, New Zealand and Norway. Now you would think at this point, with these videos that had all been recorded in the bag, they would be sending them all around the world to promote this single, and they were doing that. And yet they also contradicted themselves, because they were contacted by the producers at Top of the Pops, who asked them to come on the show to play this song live. And up until this point, they'd always said no. The Beatles had never appeared on Top of the Pops live. It started in 1964, and any appearance they'd ever made on the show was a pre-recorded appearance. But for some reason here, they agreed to it. They said yes, so they were going to appear live on Top of the Pops to, well, I was going to say play live. It's not live, is it? It was a live broadcast of them miming both Paperback Writer and Rain. So on June 16th of 1966 at 7:30 p.m. on BBC One, Top of the Pops started, and the Beatles were due to appear live on this show. They were going to be the last band on performing, and they would play both Paperback Writer and Rain live on the show, or they'd mime it live on the show anyway. Now this is quite an interesting performance, this, because it would actually be the last time, with the exception of the Our World satellite broadcast of All You Need Is Love in 1967, this was the last time the Beatles ever appeared on a live television show, on a live broadcast. So yeah, it's quite a big moment, that. Now I've got some bad news for you folks, because if, like me, you want to see this Top of the Pops performance, well, I've got some bad news for you. You can't. Because at the time, the BBC had a policy that they didn't have an archive of video, of film. They would record something onto a tape, and because tape was expensive and the BBC didn't have a lot of money, they would then wipe the tapes and use the same tapes again for something else. So most things that were made in the 60s and the 70s were lost. So a lot of Top of the Pops performances have been lost. Doctor Who episodes are the other big thing that they've lost a lot of. Now ones that have survived is either by luck or because the BBC, they would copy these tapes onto other tapes and send them around the world for other people to use. So a lot of the performances that have survived have been because they've sent them elsewhere for other people, and then other people have kept hold of them. So yeah, but unfortunately, so far this isn't one of them. This is one of those performances that has been lost. Now, as I'm a Beatles fan here, I'm maybe going to be biased, but I think of everything the BBC wiped and lost over this period, this is the most historically significant one. because this was the last time the Beatles ever appeared on a live television show, with the exception of the Our World satellite broadcast, which was also on the BBC. It was a good job that was a satellite broadcast all around the world, because otherwise that would have been lost as well. But yeah, it is sad that this was lost, and I think the thing that makes me especially sad is obviously we got the Beatles playing Paperback Writer live on concerts around this period, but we never got them playing Rain live. The only Rain performances we got was those music videos, which was all in the studio or in Chiswick House. This is the closest we ever came to a live performance of Rain, and it's been lost. So yeah, if there is anybody out there who happens to have somehow found a tape, a proper good quality tape of this performance, let somebody know, because I'm sure there'd be a lot of people very happy to see that turn up. Anyway, like I mentioned there as well, when the Beatles went on tour in 1966, bizarrely, they actually decided they would play Paperback Writer live. It's the only song from 66 they would ever play live. Nothing off Revolver or Rain ever got done live, but Paperback Writer did. Now, I love this song. I think it's a brilliant single, and it's one of those rock and roll records that you've just got to turn up. It's got to go full blast. It's got to be loud, because that guitar, you know, the etc. Yeah, it's a fantastic guitar riff on it, and the bass is quite underrated on this song. But I can understand why Paul wanted his bass turned up at this point and made louder, because he's one of the greatest bass players of all time, and up until this point, most of his bass lines have been drowned quite deep in the mix, because obviously back then, you couldn't have your bass turned up too loud. But that was about to change from here on in, because Paul would start having his bass much louder in the mixes. Now, this single would also kind of be both a beginning and an end for the Beatles. So what I mean by this is, up until this point, most of the singles they put out have been Lennon on the A side and McCartney on the B side. I think Can't Buy Me Love was Can't Buy Me Love, was that the first single they ever, well no, Love Me Do I suppose is a McCartney song. I'm thinking out loud now and doubting myself. But the vast amount of singles they put out was always Lennon on the A side, McCartney on the B side. Then the previous single to this one, We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper, it was a double A side, so you've got Lennon's Day Tripper and McCartney's We Can Work It Out. Although McCartney technically sings the lead on Day Tripper, doesn't he? Anyway, this time, Paperback Writer, we have McCartney on the A side and Lennon on the B side. And this is kind of a beginning and an end, because from here on, pretty much all the singles they put out were either a McCartney A side, or if it wasn't a McCartney A side, it would pretty much be a double A side with McCartney on one side, Lennon on the other. The only real exception to that would be Ballad of John and Yoko, which was obviously a Lennon song on the A side with Old Brown Shoe on the B side, and Something / Come Together, which was a double A side. But other than that, pretty sure every other single from the Beatles after this was McCartney on the A side or the double A side. Do correct me if I'm wrong though and I'm forgetting something. Now, I touched on it there, but it really does sadden me that the Top of the Pops performance of this has been lost. I say it's been lost, it kind of was found, in the sense that if you look online you can find it, but it's a very poor copy, because what happened, some kid in the 60s, when he was watching it on the telly, he got his camera out and he recorded them. So it's a recording of a television in the 60s showing it, and it was just silent footage, so they've had to sort of sync it up with the record. But it's not great quality at all, but at least you can kind of see what it went out like. I should say as well, it went out in black and white. There's plenty of photos of them in the Top of the Pop studio, which makes it look all fantastic because it's all in colour. But in reality, it was in black and white. I'll touch on it more in the next video as well, but I think it was the Rain performance that I do think was the one that I feel more sad we've lost, because Paperback Writer, we obviously got live performances of that one in this period. I love the proper video for this song as well, the one in Chiswick House Gardens. I just think it's a fun video, really. It's nothing too serious, it's just them miming it in the garden and looking at some statues and stuff, and sitting on a bench, I think, as well at points in the conservatory. But I just think it's a cool video, and the Abbey Road videos, I have seen them obviously on the One Plus box set, but they're a bit boring, to be honest. At least this one, they're out and about somewhere. I don't know why they felt the need to make 4 videos. I don't know why they just didn't do the one video at Chiswick House and send that around the world, because were people going to notice? I suppose they maybe would if one got shown on Thank You Lucky Stars, another on Top of the Pops, another on the other one, Ready Steady Go. They maybe would have clicked on then, but yeah, these days though, the Abbey Road ones, they're more, I would call them the alternative videos. I would say the proper video for both this and Rain is the Chiswick House recordings, filmings, videos, etc. Yeah. But yeah, to conclude here, because I'm rambling, it's a great single. It's not the greatest Beatles song ever made, but it's a fine rock and roll record. Great riff, play it loud. Yeah, really like Paperback Writer. So that concludes another episode of Revolver In-Depth, folks. Once again, thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, do what Paulie Mackey's doing here, the writer of this song. Give it a thumbs up, man, you know. It's a very cool thing to do, yeah, all right. So yeah, like the video. Leave a comment as well. Do you like this song? Do you not like this song? Do you have a copy of the Top of the Pops performance on tape in your attic? A proper recording of it, as in the original master, or a copy of the master, not a film of you recording it on your TV. Do you have the actual original footage? Because if you do, let us know, because we'll all be very happy to see that. Yeah, what else? Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. That would mean a great deal. Means a lot, yeah. Shows that people are liking this sort of stuff, you know what I mean? What else? Yes, there's a playlist on my channel called Revolver In-Depth, which consists of all previous episodes in this series, which is every track on Revolver. If you want to hear about any track on Revolver, well, good news, go in that playlist and you can pick whichever one takes your fancy. Pick all of them. There's also one more video to be added on there, which is the B-side to this single. That'll be the next video. Speaking of which, join me next time for the last time here on Revolver In-Depth, where we're all going to shine because the weather is fine.